everyone, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today, again, is my wife, Lynnea Glasser.
Hello. I'm a last-minute replacement for Martin.
Yeah, that's right. The schedule says Matt and Martin are on today, and then neither of them individually could make it. So here we are at the last minute and great expense. Today is Sunday, October 6th, 2013, and we're a live call-in public access atheist show promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state, yada, yada, yada. You know the drill. We're available through live streaming at ustream.tv, and you can check out atheist-experience.com or provide feedback on the official show blog at freethoughtblogs.com/axp, or email us at tv@atheist-community.org. And you should check out our other podcasts, The Non-Profits, Going Strong, and Godless Bitches, which is supposed to be recording new episodes, but I haven't seen them lately. But I'm sure they'll show up any day now, so check it out. And if you enjoy the show today, then you're welcome to come have dinner at Threadgill's after the show at 301 West Riverside Drive, and we'll arrive around 6 p.m. How have you been?
I have been fantastic.
Yes, you have. I already know that, but they don't.
Yes, no, fantastic. I don't have a topic prepared because I was not expecting to be on today, but it looks like we have calls. If we don't, we can talk about
never
some other
fear,
stuff.
it turns
Morality
out we
is
do.
always a black morass.
Yes. Check out the blog this week. I think there's been a large amount of posts this week, and I actually posted something with content today before I got here. And so did Tracy earlier. So anyway, with all that, let's go to Seth in Seattle.
Hello.
Hi, Seth.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Fine. Great.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Great. So what'd you call in about?
I was hoping to offer, I'm a Christian, and I was hoping to offer a brief defense of miracles and why I believe they're true and valid and perfectly fine with science.
Okay, before you get to that, what's a miracle?
That's the first thing I was going to go to, actually.
Okay.
The definition of a miracle that I would use is, well, I would probably define it, it'd be best to define it with an example, I think. I would use as an example, when Moses takes a wooden staff, throws it on the ground, and it turns it into a physical, living, breathing snake. That would be a good example of a miracle. A good example, or a bad example of a miracle, something that I don't think is a genuine miracle, biblically speaking, would be something like, I didn't study for a test and I prayed about it and I got an A+ anyway. Or, if somebody says, oh, I prayed for 6 months and, I prayed for you and 6 months of chemotherapy later, the cancer's gone. I think those things are amazing. They're wonderful, but they're not, biblically speaking, miracles. So I think, God's in control of all things.
I think we're with you so far for the most part, but if you could, maybe make a general case for what's different about those two things, then maybe it would be clarify what a miracle actually is.
Well, because that's what the Bible presents as miracles. So the Bible presents, so God's in control of all things. Okay. But there's a difference between something happening providentially and something happening miraculously. I believe all things are predestined by God, as it says in Ephesians and elsewhere. But that doesn't mean that everything is a miracle. A miracle is the suspension, the temporary suspension of the normal, natural order of things. So
something that physically could not happen unless someone had control and could just break the rules of how things work.
Well, I think the first two sources I would go to, as far as that goes, would be the book Miracles by C.S. Lewis and the book Science and Hypothesis by the physicist Henry Poincaré.
Okay.
Lewis, I think, puts it really well when he says that we don't call them miracles because we believe that they're contradictions or outrages against nature.
Okay.
But nature by itself could not produce them. So there's nothing physically impossible about, you know, an extra planet existing in the solar system. But nature by itself could not create it.
Okay. Now, you'd agree that there are lots of things that would be unexplainable to us with our current amount of knowledge, but which
Yes.
would turn out to fall within the laws of physics. Like, for instance, an airplane 500 years ago would probably look miraculous, right?
I think it would. People
Or
back
a
then wouldn't know
jetpack.
how
That
to
would be
explain that,
cooler,
sure.
actually.
Oh yeah,
let's,
sure.
Let's say a
Yeah, I
jetpack.
like
I
jetpacks
jump
are
up in
fine.
the air and fly around. People then would have thought that that was a miracle, but in fact, it's just technology they didn't understand, right?
To a certain extent, I think that's true. That's similar to the objection when people say, "Well, you know, when they talk about Joseph and Mary, Mary getting pregnant, miraculously." People often object that, well, of course, they were an ancient people. They didn't understand science. And, of course, they'd be willing to readily accept something bizarre like that.
Well, I
because they
mean,
didn't understand.
that's not what I would say about Joseph and Mary. I would say it's just a story, and there's no reason to believe all that stuff happened. But nevertheless, and same thing about the stick and snake.
Yeah, I'm going to make a throwback to the last time that I was on here, because I feel like it fits very well. The last time I was on here, I don't know if you saw, probably not, but I did a topic about Irish mythology and some Irish folk tales, and they're called folk tales and not miracles or Bible stories because they're not generally accepted. But one of the stories involved angels giving a man a hat where he could turn invisible. Another one involved a giant serpent, like river-sized serpent, being cast out by a preacher with holy water who walked around a lake 3 times. And then that serpent made one of the lakes and one of the lochs in Ireland. And these fit within your definition of the miracle, in that they're things that physically really couldn't happen unless you have... They're not abominations against nature, because you can imagine a snake that's that big. I mean, that could physically exist. But this isn't generally accepted as a true thing that happened. And would you accept them as true things that happened? Because they said angels gave this hat, this priest cast out this giant serpent with the grace of God. Do you think that those things actually happened?
I would. Well, here's the thing. I believe that miracles genuinely happen, but that doesn't mean that I believe every silly thing that I hear people say.
Well,
so,
why is it a silly thing?
Well, the way I think of it is, I mean, part of it is the purpose of miracles. One of the purposes of miracles in Scripture is to validate revelation. So when God told Moses to go to the Israelites and tell them, hey, God sent me and told me to tell you guys this, well, anyone could do that. Anyone can say that God sent them. So one of the purposes of miracles is to show them, okay, here, I did this miracle. I clearly can't do it under my own power. I'm just a human. I can't turn a staff to a snake. So the only explanation is that actually, the text specifically says, when Moses asks him that question, he says, okay, that they may know. And then God does the miracle of withering Moses' hand and healing it.
Well,
and then
Irish people needed to know the word of God back then. They were pagans. And actually, some of the folklore tales had to deal with them saying why, fairies didn't get special treatment, or, like fairies weren't real, but God was. And that these were things that God did, and that the priest had this special power to cast out this giant snake because God gave it to him. and I'm still not sure why you wouldn't believe that story.
Well, basically, it would come down to how I justify my worldview. So everyone has a worldview. Everyone has a view of who God is. Does God exist? Is he relevant to creation at all? Everyone has a view of truth and ethics and that kind of thing.
Okay.
I get mine strictly from the Bible.
So in other words, you start under the assumption that the Bible is true, and since we don't start with that, are we going to be able to find some kind of common ground here? I mean...
yes, I would say that. So I would say, when it comes to reason in Scripture, the way I approach it, I don't reason my way to Scripture. I reason
you just start by assuming that Scripture is true. Like maybe if she had started with the assumption that the Irish folk stories were true, then she could sit here and assert very confidently that the giant snake thing really happened.
Right.
Yeah.
The
Irish people deserve salvation too.
In response to that, I would say that ultimately, if you take any worldview whatsoever and reason it out logically, reason it out consistently, ultimately it will fall apart and fall into contradiction and absurdity, unless it's the Christian worldview.
No, I mean, worlds can be self-contained within each other. The people who work on the Star Wars universe, for instance, try very hard to make sure that everything that's claimed to be canon isn't contradictory with like something that was happening in another story somewhere else. So they could ultimately wind up with a Star Wars universe that's totally consistent with itself. It just didn't happen.
Right. And that's why I would say... I might put it this way.
And the other thing is, you said that every worldview except the Christian worldview, but are you considering those Christians in Ireland who believe these stories to not be Christians?
I'd make a couple of distinctions. As far as the Irish Christians go, I would say, well, there are a couple different explanations. I haven't read a whole lot on Irish mythology.
Sure. Very few people have. That's fine.
Yeah,
I don't blame you. I wouldn't recommend it.
I'm mostly familiar with Roman mythology, but I would say, well, first of all, sometimes people just they make up a story. Like J.R.R. Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings. He didn't believe that it was literally true. He was just he was self-consciously making up a mythology, making up a story.
Right. But Lord of the Rings could be self-consistent, right?
Actually, Tolkien was the reason why he took so long to publish the stories was because he was so incredibly meticulous about making it consistent.
Exactly. He wrote the Silmarillion and all that stuff.
Right. But again, he would not say this is so. Let me put it this way: the only proof for the existence of God is that without God, you can't prove anything. Now, I know that
I don't accept that that's true.
I would just like to point out that
hold on one second. Just let me finish my thought. Obviously, it's easy to just assert, but I would say, okay, let's try that out. Let me ask you what your worldview is. What do you believe the world is, where it came from, how it works, and all that?
Asking a question is not making a point, so I'm going to pause on that one, backtrack. I would like to point out that when you first called in, you said, I believe in miracles.
Right.
Which is, by definition, something that is not self-consistent with how the world works. And then you are saying that Christianity is the only thing that is internally self-consistent. So you're saying miracles exist, which are things that are not consistent with worldview, and you're saying Christianity is the thing that doesn't have any conflicts with internal consistency, which I guess you can say if anything that looks weird is just a miracle. Or
weren't you saying earlier that a miracle is something which violates the way the universe normally works?
It is God suspending his normal operation in the world.
Okay,
right.
So much for consistency.
Yeah, you can just say anything goes, because God did it. Can God make anything happen?
God can do anything that's consistent with his nature. So there are things that he can't do. Like, for example, he can't. Well, for example, there are things in the Bible that he says that he cannot do. So being omnipotent doesn't mean he can do anything. He says specifically that he can't sin, and specifically he can't lie. And one of the things that he can't do is make a contradiction true. The reason being is because if he was to state a contradiction, he would be engaging in the nature of lying, which is something that he has revealed in Scripture that he cannot do.
So if there were any contradictions or lies from God within the Bible, would your religion be false?
I would put it this way.
That's a kind of yes/no question or a weasel out.
The problem with the question is what you consider to be a contradiction depends on your worldview. So I'm getting my worldview from Scripture.
See,
if you want to
the problem here is that when you're trying to rest your proof on God on the assumption that, or on the claim that there can be no contradictions in the Bible, I'm pretty sure that any contradictions I could imagine in any work could be explained given the sorts of logical contortions that I've heard apologists go through. Sure, you can iron out what appear to be holes in the Bible, but when you need to go to these enormous lengths to prove that, Judas was hanged and fell and spilled his guts out at the same time, it's like that particular claim kind of loses its force because it no longer becomes an exercise in actually comparing things in the Bible. It just becomes an exercise in how far you can go to come up with word games to not find any contradictions in the Bible. I'm just saying that's how it looks to us.
Sure, and that goes back to my point about what
back to what you said earlier, where you said you don't reason your way to the Bible, but you start from the presumption that the Bible is true and work from there. The problem here is that unless we find a way to reason to the Bible without initially assuming the Bible is true, then I'm not going to say you're definitely wrong. I'm just going to say we can't really have a conversation where we meet on any common ground.
I would point back to when I reason about the Bible, I reason from the impossibility of the contrary. So I believe that
we don't accept the impossibility of the contrary. So again, we're not starting from the same place.
Okay. Here's what I would say. So I believe that if you reason from any other worldview, you ultimately will always end up binding yourself and contradicting yourself. Okay. Well, then tell me what your world. Can you describe what your world? I can't respond to your world.
No. You said every other possible worldview. So that means I shouldn't have to give you a specific worldview because you've complained to categorically rule them all out. That's a pretty neat trick.
I've got a good worldview. So I created the universe by traveling back in time.
You created the universe by traveling back in time.
Yes.
That's your worldview?
Can you disprove that?
Well, can you prove that you can travel back in time?
I don't need to. I just need to prove that the contrary is not correct.
Yeah, and I assume she's right.
Okay, and the contrary of... Okay, so the contrary of...
You're laughing because you cannot disprove it. And you are stalling for time.
Okay. So you're saying that your worldview is you can travel back in time.
I already did it.
And you say that the contrary to that is untrue.
Yeah. Can you prove that did not happen?
Okay, well, let's start with the laws of logic. In your worldview, can you account for the fact that the laws of logic are universal, invariant, and transcendent and apply everywhere?
Unless I choose to suspend them.
Well, no, that's not what I said earlier. What I was saying, God, I said specifically God cannot lie. So there's no.
Well, I'm not God. I am myself. So I can lie.
So you can lie then. Okay,
I can.
Well, then
I'm not though.
Okay, so you're a finite, lying, sinful human being. Of course, I distrust what
No,
you say.
she didn't say she was finite and sinful. She just said she can lie if she wants. That actually
It's not
makes
a
her
sin.
able to do stuff that God can't. So she
Yep.
is
More
powerful
powerful.
than God.
And I traveled back in time, and I made the universe. And I can understand if your limited brain can't accept it.
Okay, well, here let me take the world that I'm going to guess you actually.
Whoa, hold
you're,
on, you
you're
didn't
an
prove it
atheistic
wrong.
Evolutionist. You're an atheistic evolutionist who believes that essentially all there is matter in motion, and that's it for the universe, right?
No, I just
That's what
told
you
you what I
truly
believed.
No, okay. Well, if you want me to engage with this seriously, I mean, you have to tell me what your actual worldview is. Is that your worldview? You basically say,
Why
either
do
God
you
doesn't
think
exist
that
or
is not my worldview?
Because I have common sense.
Because you have what?
I have common sense.
What
Okay.
does that have to do with whether it's real? Why are you applying common sense or reason to a thing? I mean, you need to start out with the belief that it's true. You can't reason yourself into it.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you adopt any non-Christian worldview, eventually,
Yeah.
if you reason it out consistently,
Uh-huh.
it just collapses. Like an
But
example would
mine
be,
doesn't.
if somebody says, I mean, this is a really quick example. If somebody says there is no truth, there is no absolute truth, I would simply ask, okay, is that statement absolutely true?
But
I mean,
you're
that's
saying every other worldview, but I just gave you one that doesn't, and you are ignoring that.
Well, I would simply ask then, what confidence do I have at all that your claims about the reality of the world are authoritative?
That is a really good question.
That's a really good question, and that's how someone who is an atheist like Russell would approach.
But not you,
The Christian
because you
worldview.
created the world.
Not me.
But yeah, that is how someone like I, who don't think I created the universe, would approach claims about the Bible. I would say, why would I think that the Bible is authoritative to begin with? Why would I share in your unreasoned assumption that the Bible is authoritative unless we could get to some kind of other means of understanding it that way?
Even if
Okay,
it
I
was
might put it-
internally consistent and could not be contradicted.
Yeah.
Okay, I might go after it this way. I mentioned earlier Henry Poincaré's book, Science and Hypothesis.
Okay.
When he talks about science, he mentions a fact that is obvious, but it's one of those things that you don't often think about it. As far as science goes, he mentions the fact that all scientists, no matter how knowledgeable they are, always deal with a finite number of facts.
That is true.
So if you're going to make claims about how the Bible can't possibly be true because
I didn't say
miracles
the Bible
contradict the
can't
nature of
possibly.
science.
Wait a minute. Nobody here ever said the Bible can't possibly be true. We just
Oh, okay.
said basically what you said. Why would we accept it as authoritative?
Well, because it was written by God.
Why would I think that?
Again, because if you go after any other worldview, like
Well,
if
no,
you
no,
go
no.
after-
What about hers?
You're so rude. What's wrong with my worldview that you keep trying to write it out?
Well, how okay? How would you prove to me that you can travel through time?
Don't need to.
Don't need to. I already did it. It happened.
Well, I want proof of it.
Okay. Well, now you know what our objection is to assuming the Bible is true. But we're already almost halfway through the show.
Yeah.
You are welcome to call back another time, though.
Okay.
I mean, quite honestly, Seth, it's been a fun conversation.
Well, sweet. That was my goal.
All right.
Okay.
See ya.
All right. Bye.
I can tell you right now that he will have called back because I time traveled and already saw it.
Good job.
So look forward to it.
Look forward to it having happened.
Yes.
David in Chicago.
Hi, I called a couple weeks ago and actually spoke to both of you guys in the after show.
Okay.
Woo.
I talked about being a polytheist.
Okay.
Fantastic. Tell everyone else.
Well, basically, that last call was very good, and it answered a lot of the things that I would have said, except for I'm not a Christian. I don't believe that Jesus had magic powers, and I'm a deist, really, but I believe that there are multiple gods, not just one.
Okay, deist meaning, just
Like-
checking.
Like, they exist, but they don't do anything anymore. That's what my
Okay.
friend tells me.
And why
He's an
do you
atheist.
think they exist?
Mostly, it kind of defeats the purpose, because that last guy, I don't know. Basically, the Bible and other religious books are the main reason for it, but like you guys were saying, so why that should be considered as evidence. You guys have some very good points, and I really don't have much to argue against it, except for using the actual Bible as evidence.
Yeah,
Right.
a lot of people liked to believe a lot of things, and it didn't always make sense or add up or have good reasons for it.
Yeah, and again, I'll repeat what I said to the last guy, which is that we're not sitting here saying that the Bible couldn't possibly have happened. It's just that without starting from the assumption that those stories happened, there's really no reason to go there.
So you're agnostic.
I'm an agnostic atheist, personally.
So you're both.
Yeah.
I'm fine with saying it never happened.
Okay.
I don't make that that kind of politeness towards like unicorns. I'm fine with saying unicorns don't exist.
I'm fine with saying unicorns could exist. They just probably don't.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway.
Let me tell you the one specific verse in the Bible. It's very, very short. Why it kind of convinces me that there are more than one God.
You mean within the extended universe of the Bible story, there is
Yes.
more than one God. Wait,
Yeah.
is it the one? Is it from like very early in Genesis?
Yes.
Okay, I know that one. Read it.
I
It
don't.
says, if I could find it here, it says, "Let us create man in our image." That's basically it. I can't find it.
There are actually a lot of little linguistic artifacts like that, and that is why people who, I believe, Friedman, who wrote the Old Testament, I think the frequent scholarly conclusion is that there was a polytheistic pre-Bible culture, and the early Bible was basically a collection of stories that got basically put together and then gradually cohered over the next few books. So that's also why Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 seem to tell the story of creation two different times, and the details are slightly different in each one. You know
I've
that,
noticed
right?
that.
Somewhat.
Okay. So yeah, there are hints that the authors of the earliest Bible stories in Genesis were actually polytheists.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I do have a few questions. I know this might be boring to the viewers, but I want to learn a little bit more about you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're atheists, and is that? I said this last time, and y'all got a bit offended. I said, does that mean y'all hate God? And I don't mean as in like you hate Santa Claus. I mean as in like the character of God, the way He's written about in the Bible, about being jealous.
Personally, I don't think the God described in the Bible is very praiseworthy. But even if He was the greatest God in the world, I'd still be an atheist. I mean, the greatest God in all possible mythologies, I still wouldn't believe Him. So no, being an atheist doesn't mean that we hate God.
So I think part of the reason that maybe people get upset when you ask them, do you hate God, is because it's a line that Christian preachers or, authority figures give to their church about why they don't believe in God or why they don't like God.
About
Because
atheists being angry?
Yeah, they're just say atheists are just angry at God because they want to sin or they want to do something against God because they don't want their congregation to believe that there are legitimate reasons for not believing in God. So they give incorrect reasons, and then atheists have to deal with kind of this debunking of, no, I'm not angry at God, but I just don't think that it makes any sense. And the God of the Bible is definitely one of the most horrible villains that you could ever possibly create.
I mean, drowning all but 8 people in the entire world is
Yeah.
a pretty horrific scheme when you don't, make it into pretty children's books that gloss over the details.
Yeah, can you imagine? I drowned one baby, and I get in trouble, but if you drown every single
She did not drown any
Bible-
babies. I'm just saying.
Drown every single baby. I mean, that's terrible. That's terrible.
Okay. I have another question. So you would basically align yourselves with people who consider themselves to be skeptics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you more an atheist group or a skeptic group or both?
I would say we're both. I mean, you could be, like the example I always bring out is that there's this group of people called the Raelians that you might actually identify with. I'm not sure. No.
Don't be mean.
No. There's a group of people called the Raelians who don't believe there's a God, but they believe that the Bible was written by aliens.
Like the Ancient Aliens TV show?
Yeah, kind of like that. And
I've heard
technically those guys are atheists because they don't believe in gods. But we would not really like Raelians to hang out in our group, I think. So,
If you were asking specifically about the Atheist Community of Austin, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of overlap. I mean, there's some
Yeah,
people
definitely.
who kind of slip through the cracks on either side, and that's fine. Like, we can't be all lockstep.
Okay, so I got one last question, and I'm really kind of lost myself in this. I went to church this morning, and I just didn't feel right, and I felt out of place.
mm-hmm.
But, so what would be your, I guess, default position that you would, handle claims about God and deities? Like a filter that you would put...
So if someone proposed a new God topic to us, what would our default position be?
Yes, ma'am.
I would say as a good general principle, what I would tell people is it's not good policy to believe stuff until you have a reason for it.
Yeah.
And that means you don't just accept something as true until proven false. You wait until there's evidence for something, and then you believe it. And also, Carl Sagan's statement is pretty relevant here, where he said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Oh, that's pretty powerful there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I might be an atheist. I don't know.
If you...
Welcome in.
Yeah, welcome. No, if you want to read something that's not directly atheist, but is sort of about, critical thinking and the way to approach a skeptical worldview, I just mentioned Carl Sagan. His book, Science of the Candle in the Dark, The Demon-Haunted World. The Demon-Haunted World is one of my favorite books to recommend to people, just as being a general book about how to think.
And you said Carl Sagan?
Carl Sagan. He used to do a PBS series on science in the 70s.
Okay, I'll pick that up.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, thank you for
David.
calling back in. Glad you
All
did.
right. Y'all have a good day.
All right,
Thank
see ya.
you.
Bye.
Wow.
That was exciting.
I love that call. Arthur in Illinois.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm glad. I'm thrilled to be on your show, Russell and Lynnea. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Lynnea.
Lynnea, got it. And as a matter of fact, this is kind of a follow-up on your call just now.
Okay.
The polytheist or the one before?
Just now.
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
Actually, my call is the one that's just now, but the
Yeah,
before
forget it.
mine.
That's cool.
The immediate antecedent.
Yes, the penultimate call that you.
Right, yes.
Anyway,
So far.
Russell, you just made the point that it's pointless to believe in something without evidence.
Right.
Something like that. I think I've got it correct. And I wanted to give you an analogy that I think I'm puzzled about because it seems to fit what you're saying, but it doesn't seem to fit. It seems to contradict what you're saying, or at least I'm missing the point. And I'll give you a very simple example. In the case of color, for a person who's colorblind,
I got one for this. I just think you should know in advance.
Oh no! I'm not. I'm really looking for an answer.
All right, go
Sure.
for it.
Okay. No. So it sounds like you've heard this line of reasoning.
Yeah,
Well,
play it out,
great.
and then I'll tell you the answer.
Fun trivia fact. I'm going
Okay.
to out Russell, but he's red-green colorblind.
It's true, yeah.
Right. Now, red and green, I'm not worried about because I think
But
evidence is that the
Totally
two
colorblind, sees the world in black and white, right?
Okay. Right. Or at least there is a difference between purple and chartreuse, etc.
Sure.
And subjectively, I have experienced, these colors. They're real. They're subjectively real. This is my terminology. I guess you can agree with. I suppose that's commonly understood. I know there's an explanation for the color. That light rays hit our retina and it's transformed into colors, which we perceive subjectively. But no one can possibly experience color through an explanation of it.
Okay.
So please, so it's only through faith that one who has not experienced color, in a sense, and I have an answer to it too, and I just want to know if your answer coincides with mine. It's only through faith in the conviction of others, which is the way people come to God in the Bible, in the same way, that one who is colorblind and or blind accepts, recognizes, attests to the fact that colors exist.
So you don't think that I could demonstrate to a skeptical colorblind person that color is real?
I don't know how skeptical would apply. If we took out the skeptical part,
Well,
I think, right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're positing that some guy could just not believe in color at all, and I couldn't prove it to him unless he was just willing to take my word for it.
I think I know where you're heading, and I wonder if that's really it. Let's assume that that's correct. Let's assume that that's correct.
Okay, I
Like
can.
mountains.
I can
Some
do it
people will
for you.
really find that funny. Go on.
What?
Okay, I
believing
can
in
do it for you.
mountains.
Okay, I got 5
Sorry.
boxes. 4 of them are painted blue. 1 of them is painted red. You with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take an object, like a small pencil or something, and I'm going to put it in the red box. So
Okay.
this box is distinguishable by me, but not by the colorblind person. Then I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to leave the room, skeptic. You're going to rearrange the boxes. These boxes are indistinguishable to you.
I've got your argument. I follow
Okay.
it. That person will then, if I can figure it, I hope I'm not interrupting, that person will conclude that your claim is correct, even though he doesn't experience the color, because you're using some means to identify the box.
Yeah, no, he doesn't have to directly experience the color, and he doesn't have to take my word on faith. He can be as skeptical as he wants, but I
Right.
predict that I will be able to pick the pencil, the box
Yeah.
with the pencil when they're all closed every single
Right.
time without fail, and
I
I'm
like
going to
your
be right.
example. I like your example,
Okay.
and I think it's a good one, and it's given me something to think about. However, you do have to recognize that people experience color who can see color directly. It's not through faith at all.
No, it's
right.
through photon receptors in their eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. You've given me something to think about. I was going to ask you about the conscience, and I was going to ask Matt about that. But I just went on Wikipedia since I spoke with you and while I was listening to your program. And you know how I've listened to, and the most interesting and the best exposure to the theist versus atheist position is when you listen to those debates between the theists who are formerly atheists versus the atheists who are formerly theists. I think you'll agree,
okay.
in addition to listening to your show. And I think I'd recommend that to all your...
Is there a particular one that you thought was good? I might like to listen to it.
I have a bunch of podcasts, and I'll give you an example. I've listened to all the arguments, the cosmological one, etc., and how can something come from nothing kind of argument, which of course you've heard, and
right.
the fact that scientists believe in posit the Big Bang theory. Now, I could claim that I don't pretend to understand it, but can I claim that I have faith in the scientific community that they're correct, and I don't need to really understand it, but I could say that they've been consistently right, and so the evidence is I can extrapolate that the Big Bang theory is probably true because I have faith, but I digress.
Okay.
Anyway.
Just real quick before you go, I wanted to clarify, you're not asking about it, but what did you mean conscious, like your morality or your mental?
Conscience has been morality.
Okay.
Conscience has been morality. My question was, were you a former Christian, Lynnea?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know how a Christian viewed their conscience versus, which is that guide to right and wrong, versus the role of God vis-a-vis the conscience.
Well, I'm glad we clarified. Let's move on.
Yes.
Now that you're not asking about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I thank you for the call, and I hope you don't mind if I give you a call back again sometime.
We'd love it, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thanks a lot. You have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to go with Vincent in Miami.
Yes, hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, I'm very kind of different from the previous callers that you had. And if I may, I'll start giving you a story to illustrate my point, okay?
Wait, what is your
point? Can you just say your point first and then give the story?
Certainly. That I believe atheism, if I may use the B word, believe, it's something personal.
Something wrong with
that an understanding, right, that comes to you personally. Is that wrong?
Well, no, go ahead.
Right. So just the point I was going to make, it's a childhood story that most people have, right?
I hope it's not a very long story.
Not at all, not at all.
Okay.
Right? I used to watch Santa Claus on TV and get phone calls from him and write him letters, and you could have tried to prove to me that Santa Claus didn't exist all you wanted when I was a kid. It would have not worked out for me, okay?
Yeah, because you had the mind of a child at that point.
Absolutely. But then nobody had to tell me Santa Claus doesn't exist. At one point, it just didn't add up. I recognized, well, it's not the same guy every time, so it makes sense, right?
Uh-huh.
And I kind of feel that people with God are a little bit the same way because the evidence is so clear. The points about the prime mover, nothing from nothing, physics, etc.
95% of people in America would disagree with you there.
Right. And
I
think
agree
it's
with you.
Because they're like me as a kid. They're like not ready to see. They're looking at the same thing we're looking at, but they're not seeing it. They're not understanding it. And I'm not putting a judgment on them.
That's very judgmental, though.
And I feel the same way. Lynnea, talked about it earlier regarding the folk stories. Mm-hmm. And at one point people were like, okay, that doesn't make sense anymore, and you move on to something else. And personally in my life, I live in Florida, so I don't have so many Christians around, but I do have a lot of like yogis and meditators and, Eastern spiritual people. And I was sucked into that myself for a while. I can see the benefits of them, but after a while I see I try to discuss this with Christians, with Jews. I was in India this year for 4 months with Tibetan Buddhists and with Hindus, and they don't even know what an atheist is over there.
Do you see any downside to those yogis in Eastern religions and stuff? Just wondering.
If I see a downside to them?
Yeah. Like, do you see a problem with lots of people believing them?
They're very close-minded. And what's interesting, when I was in India, what was very interesting to me was that they have been so much more prepared than the Christian. The reaction that you get from Christian nowadays is it's pretty new to them to have a reaction to atheism, to other people questioning their belief. In India, these people have been ready for hundreds of years, answering people's, mistrust about their beliefs. So they're armed up, over there, and it's very interesting. I didn't go there to look for spirituality. I was interested in the culture.
Okay.
But in
have
general,
you heard about breatharians, though?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Do you think that there might be some kind of harm in that kind of thing? People who believe that people who not only believe that you don't have to eat food to survive, but but they go around telling other people and convincing them to stop eating food.
Yeah, no, that is one aspect. I think one is that would be even scarier to me, people claiming that they can cure diseases,
Right, well, people do that too,
that's
right?
even worse,
People do that too. There's like faith healers all over America.
Absolutely. I'm a massage therapist.
So
and with acupuncture and everything.
What I'm saying though is I'm not content to sit around and wait for people to figure out themselves that Santa Claus isn't real when Santa Claus is responsible for making people starve to death and maybe not go to a doctor if they're sick, and maybe not take their kids to a doctor if they're sick. I don't think that it's a good idea to be passive and wait for people to come to conclusions on their own.
And let me ask about another related topic, which is any other topic of knowledge. So plate tectonics are real, but do you think that we should wait around for people to figure out, hey, yeah, by the way, these earthquakes are caused by these plate tectonics, and that makes sense that the crusts are bumping up against each other? Or do you think we should just teach it in school, hey, plate tectonics are a real thing, that's how the world works?
No, I do believe people should be educated about what plate tectonics are, obviously.
Sure.
But if they are not believing in the plate tectonics theory, for example, and you keep predicting where earthquakes are more likely to happen, and you're telling people, and so they don't even believe to you, and they do get hurt because of their faith that plate tectonics theory doesn't actually exist.
Right, but do you think that schools should be? If we've got a guy who's in geology class and he says, "I don't believe in plate tectonics. I think that it's stupid, and I'm going to answer all my test questions by saying that's a dumb question. Plate tectonics aren't real." Do you think that guy should get to pass his class anyway?
No, and what you are doing, having a conversation about atheism, is absolutely necessary. That is not at all.
Okay.
But in the result that we're getting, because I exchanged a few emails with Beth over the week, and she told me, she's like, listen, we do get emails every week from people who are telling us, hey, thank you so much for opening my eyes. I am not a theist anymore, and that is great. And it is partially because of what you're doing, but I think it is an accumulation of things that, people come to. They've watched your show, they've observed, nature, they reflected themselves. It is something that came from them, and sometimes I wonder about that was the purpose of my call, but the militant atheism and because I see the mixed result that I get around myself when I'm trying to have this conversation.
Okay, hang on a minute, Vincent.
Yeah.
Lynnea, testify.
Wait, what? Well, I don't know what Russell wants me to testify about, but
tell me about you becoming an atheist.
Well, I was okay.
Okay,
I guess I will.
I thought we were on the same page with the glance I gave you. But sorry.
Oh no. The cracks in our hive mind are showing.
Crap.
I was
Our
going to
marriage
say.
is ruined too.
Oh.
Oh.
I was going to say, if atheism was a thing that people just logically got to once they thought about it enough, we would have all been atheists a long time ago because of the Renaissance and various other things that happened through history. It's, we wouldn't have had to fight a civil war to say slavery is a bad idea, you guys. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of different techniques, and people don't just kind of sit around and think about it and then be like, yeah, slavery, that's a bad idea. Atheism, that's probably true. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and a lot of that happens under the hood, or maybe you don't get to see it, but you see the results of it. And there's a lot of different influences. I don't know, me becoming an atheist, it's kind of boring, happens slowly.
I hope you don't mind me saying this.
Sure.
But you
well,
told
I don't know
me,
what you're saying.
You told me that you used to date somebody who was an atheist.
Yes.
Can I go on?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything really personal or anything. I'm just going to say that
it's true.
when Lynnea came to the realization that she didn't believe in God anymore, she was kind of mad at this guy, right? For not having, because he always tiptoed around the subject. She was a Christian, he was an atheist, and he always said, I don't want to talk about this.
Yeah.
And he was withholding stuff from her that might have been useful to her in making her own decision.
Right.
Sooner.
Yeah, I didn't know some of the objections, and he never brought them up because he was being polite.
And
good on him for being polite.
Sure.
It's probably the right thing to do at the time. I'm not sure. I can't go.
But when she came in contact with people who were open atheists, it helped her make that decision, which hadn't been available to her because she had always, like most people in America these days, had been surrounded exclusively by people who were telling her the God story was true. So
that's fine by me.
why.
I do see people coming back to me sometimes months later and be like, hey, that point you were making, I really didn't agree with you at the time. I kind of, argued with you, but I thought about it over time and it made sense now, But that's my point. Like the understanding came, the information is out there for people to understand, and that part of the information has to be created on a weekly basis, like your show and all those debates and everything. But that, sometimes fighting theists on their basis, I think it's important for atheists to understand that theists will, turn the page over and become atheists, or, change their point of view in their own time, in their own understanding, and
that's fair. We do get a lot of calls or emails from people who are saying, I'm in a debate with this person, what's the magic bullet to make them immediately roll over? And we're like, we don't care about reading your 5-page Facebook flame wall argument. It's not going to happen. Stop trying to make it happen. If it does happen, it'll happen on their own time. You've done a good job and given the counterpoint. Don't keep pushing it. They will get information from other places. It's a balance.
Right.
It's a balance.
Yeah, I think it just comes through practice and experience to know whether somebody is worth talking to or not. And I think that it takes all kinds of atheists, somebody who can be a nice guy and just put a good face on atheism while saying, yeah, and I'm an atheist, and people who are firebrands and will argue for it in public. So having said that, we've only got a few minutes left in the show, so we're going to move on to one last caller.
Of course. Thank you so much for taking my call. I really appreciate the time. Goodbye,
all right.
And good luck in the future.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye. Real quick, we've got Rookus in Ohio.
Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
Hey.
I had two quick questions. I'm an atheist.
Okay.
And
we got
the
3
first
minutes,
one,
by the way.
Okay. I'd heard Matt talk briefly about supernatural, extraterrestrial life, and I'm getting the impression that he thinks it would be supernatural. I was just wondering what you thought about that.
No. I mean, if we found some actual aliens out there, then they would be probably within the laws of the universe.
That's what I would. That's how I would look at it.
Unless it's like a Cthulhu thing,
right?
Then maybe.
Right. Anyways, my second question was, I talked briefly to Tracy about this, and my wife is Jehovah's Witness, or she used to be a Jehovah's Witness, and she told me that there is not really a hell mentioned in the Bible. Now, if that's true, I was wondering why you guys don't ever use that against the Christians that call in and make Jeff D mad.
Because I don't find it productive to argue with people about what their mythology says. They already come to every conversation believing a certain set of things. And my usual approach is to let them know I just don't see any reason to believe any of that. Because there are, 33,000 sects of Christianity in the world, and they all have slightly different beliefs. If you want to know how people justify hell, read some apologetics. Don't read the guys who are trying to debunk them. Go type in, is hell real, to Google, and you will find thousands of sermons explaining what Bible passages they get it from. Now, I think that there's a good case to be made that there's not very strong support for hell in the Bible, but I also don't think it's worth arguing about at very great length with Christians.
Fair enough. You're way more patient than me anyway.
Thanks.
No problem. All right. You guys enjoy your dinner at Thread Grills if you still go there.
Thanks. We do still go to Thread Grills, and that is at 301 West Riverside Drive. And since the show is almost over, and we have 1 minute left and are not taking another call, but I'm just going to run out the clock until they put up credits on there. But
we want to tell the people who are still on to hold on, and they can get on the after show?
We do want to tell them that.
Okay. They can hear us because the mics
also
transmit through the phones, because we don't wrap them in tinfoil.
That's science. Also, next weekend is the monthly ACA lecture, and I just wanted to mention that I'm going to be the lecturer at the Austin History Center, and I believe that starts at 12:30. And my topic is how online social media is changing the face of atheism. Anyway, thank you, Lynnea.
Thank you for having me on.
You've been a wonderful co-host. Thank all of you out there, and thank all you guys in the audience in the control room.
They do amazing work.